Right now, we are talking about the new HBO series spinoff of the Game of Thrones, A Night of the Seven Kingdoms. We are going to talk a little bit about the review and reaction of episode 5, which just aired. We're going to talk a little bit about the budget and particularly comparing it maybe to House of Dragons and some of the other Game of Thrones IP. And then we'll go a little bit into Easter eggs about the show and its connections to Game of Thrones and finish off with our ratings on what we thought. We appreciate you all watching. Without a further ado, Steven, let's get going.
Brian, that's a heck of an intro. And let me just say, I still think my Peter Claffey being a mega movie star will come to fruition at some point, because this show just keeps getting better.
Yeah.
And in the previous episode, just to remind people, basically, I thought our friend Andrew, mutual friend Andrew, summarized the end of the last episode really well. The episode concluded and he turned to me and he goes, "Man, I really wanted them to fight." So that's exactly where the new episode picked off or started off. And boom, right away, he gets clocked twice in the start of this battle and hits the ground, and boom, we cut to his childhood, which was some of the best story, writing and storytelling I've seen in a long time. And this is why this show, to me, stands out as one of the best shows made in the last few years, because they cut back to this childhood. And, you know, Peter Claffey plays such a strong kid, but really he's very sensitive and he's hurt. And so we learn in this childhood that his only friend was this girl that he was in love with, and they loved each other. And he had to watch her be killed in front of him because of they were getting robbed, basically. And it was just like this devastating moment where you go, man, this character is so traumatized. And what was interesting is, as they were kids, I was noticing, oh, he still has that timidness about him. I was confused. I thought that developed. And in that childhood, in this childhood segment, you learn that his mother is gone and he's hoping that she will come back. And so this kid is like damaged. And then on top of that, his childhood love is murdered in front of him. And so it was just a really heartwarming,
you grovel in people's destruction?
No, I mean, it was very endearing in the sense of, man, I really care about this character and look at what he's gone through. And it made me really want to root for him. And so after that mini segment, not even a mini segment, but about half of the episode, that childhood saga concluded, he ended up following this knight that was the only person to stick up for them, even though this knight is an absolute wreck, an alcoholic all over the place. And then it jumped back to the actual fight where Sir Duncan absolutely kicked butt after getting hit so many times and stabbed so many times I couldn't even count. Couldn't believe the kid was standing. And it ended with a victory. So, you know, this show continues to surprise me and impress me, especially knowing that this had about half, if not more, than the budget that House of Dragons had.
And so it was looking at like, for this Knights of the Seven Kingdoms, a budget of like 10 million, a little less than 10 million per episode, correct?
Yep.
Yeah, man, I just think, you know, it's just, again, goes to show you, just because you throw money at something doesn't guarantee them a superior product. Because, you know, I think that comparing this to House of Dragons is just, I just think it's so much better. I think you obviously, you know, you're getting to show a different side of the world. You know, you got to see, you know, the top of the social hierarchy, people competing for the thrones. And now let's see, you know, the more, you know, the plebes or whatever the heck, you know, just the normal people. And I think it goes back to before we dive into, you know, the budget too much, of like, you know, it comes back to the writing at the end of the day.
Yes.
And there is, you know, I would argue that, you know, there are a lot of emotions that you can portray in a movie, but I would argue that the most important emotion for any character, let alone your protagonist, for sure, is empathy. if you're not empathetic for your protagonist, then it's really hard to just get behind the movie. And I haven't felt myself being this empathetic for a character since, the Targaryen, you got Jaime Lannister. Game of Thrones had such a good job of even their powerful characters making them empathetic.
Yes.
And that's great writing. And despite, him having the stature of this big man, he's so broken. You see this big man, you see him a boy, him up with Egg, it's just almost like two kids. He has such a boyish soul that shines through in these. And I think because of how different this is from House of Dragons and Game of Thrones, of being a little bit erring on not that it's more mundane, but a little bit more comical moments, a little bit more grounded of a story. It's not hopping around between all the corners of the world. They're you're hopping around with his life. And I was hating on him for Peter. I was questioning whether I think that he has star power, and I think he really does. I think I really love that shot inside of the helmet during the fights. I think again it's like they have a great understanding of, I think, what makes them work with the empathetic is they've done a great job of putting you in his shoes, of feeling what he feels, whether it's in that fight of that perspective of I think you don't realize in the medieval armor how limiting it is. So it's just like a thing to just connect you with the protagonist. It's just another way in a different angle of empathy, of it's not the same of you seeing him go through this with his previous lover being killed. You're like, oh, that right there, boom, easy way to get empathetic. But showing his visor is another great way of just adding even more of you lining up with the protagonist's experience. They're nailing it there. So I really like that. And I think also it's just I'm seeing a love for the Game of Thrones IP. I'm loving the little Easter eggs. They're not, I think in Hollywood they've gone a little bit crazy about the cameos where they're a little too heavy-handed. Take a note from Elden Ring, where it's let people work for this. This is why I think that this show is, in kind of my last point of it transcending into pop culture more, is people have such a love of Game of Thrones. This is kind of scratching people's itch. I'm seeing this all over the place. Peter and his moments in it are very memeable. It's when you see a baddie, but your life's too cooked to even talk to her. He's a very, again, is a relatable character. And I like the moments where you see I think it was Aura on a horse where he walked in, and I think they were doing that was Aura my lord, and she's my lord. I remember in Game of Thrones they were telling her that peasants don't say my lord. They blend it together, and it was that was a lesson Aura was told. So I think that was Aura on that horse in there. You have in I think Bran whatever in Game of Thrones even talked about the egg, the story of him, and the night. I feel we're heading in the right direction. Every episode I like this more. I want to hear what everyone else is thinking about this as well. So, to finish this off, let's hear a rating. Steven, what do you give this last episode 5 of A Night of the Seven Kingdoms? What is your rating?
I got to go based on the character development, the overall story, the way the episode and the fight was structured and bounced back and forth. It's hard for me to give anything less than a 9, and I'd say it's definitely the best episode yet so far.
Wow. Okay. So you heard it here. If you haven't watched episode 5, definitely go over to HBO Max and check it out right now. It's definitely worth the watch. Blockbuster approved. And let us know what your rating is in the comments section. We appreciate what you think. Are there any moments that we missed from the show that you would like for us to talk about on the next episode? And we appreciate you all watching as usual. Please like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz. We appreciate you nonetheless. And we look forward to seeing you all in the next episode of the Blockbuster Brothers.